Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of All Angles. I'm Dion Jacksonville, and a very special welcome to our viewers on onespotmedia.com. Over the past few months, there has been so much focus on the work of the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee of Parliament. They've been examining some of the decisions and expenditure of a number of agencies of the Ministry of Science and Technology. We've seen PETROJAM in the news, we've seen NESL in the news. What really are the issues involved, what has come out of all of this, and importantly, what happens now. Talking through those issues on this evening's program, my guests in studio are members of the committee. We have government member Leslie Campbell, who represents the constituency of Northeast St. Catherine. Also have with us Gavin Miles, Community Outreach Officer, National Integrity Action, and Michael Phillips with us as well, an opposition member of the committee, and he represents, of course, Northwest Manchester. Before we go to our guests, though, let's go to this overview.
The motoring public paid keen attention each week to the country's only petroleum refinery, PETROJAM, for the pendulum swing of oil prices. Earlier this year, oil prices were nothing compared to the almost daily headlines coming out of PETROJAM. The public had become captivated by charges that nepotism, cronyism, and victimization were rampant under a board that hardly met over a 2-year period. It didn't help that the former human resource manager was booted a few days before Christmas in 2016. And replaced by a Yolande Ramarak, a hire which came at a greater expense than her predecessor, $3 million more. Ms. Ramarak didn't have the master's degree the job requested. There were also concerns about the PETROJAM chairman's travel expenses. Parliament's Administration and Appropriations Committee, PAAC, examines budgetary expenditure, monitors expenditure, and inquires into the administration of the government to determine hindrances to efficiency and makes recommendations to the government for improvement of public administration. Hauled before the PAAC, PETROJAM Managing Director Floyd Grindley didn't impress with his account of his stewardship. Asher Corporation was hired to provide technical services for the installation of vacuum distillation unit.
You approached this company, or did the company approach you?
I'll have to go.
You know, each time you said that.
No, but I'll have to go back to see the genesis behind the selection.
You know, each time you answer that, I wonder who running the company, if it's you or somebody else. Because if you don't know what is happening in the company that you are managing, then God Almighty, who is?
Several questions were posed to the managing director in which he failed to satisfy his interrogators. Mr. Grindley left with a promise to return with better information. This was the last the committee would see of him, as he was a no-show for the next scheduled meeting and subsequently stepped down. But Ms. Ramarak, still at the agency, still had some explaining to do.
Salary increase was granted within 1 month and paid retroactive to the start date. Salary increase was based on demands made by the HR manager based on the heavy IR component of the portfolio.
No way did I demand an increase in salary. No way did I flaunt or the process at PETROJAM. No way that I'm incompetent in executing my role as HR manager, as persons would want to believe. I am competent in all the HR service delivery areas that I do function in at PETROJAM, and I'm a little disappointed that right now persons are speaking on my behalf without knowing the facts.
There were calls for someone else to step away from his job or be fired. Dr. Andrew Wheatley, the energy minister who is responsible for PETROJAM. At first, it appeared he was going nowhere, but public pressure seemed too much for the Holness administration, and Wheatley's continued presence in the cabinet withered and until it whittled. Another subject of the Energy Ministry was under the microscope. Camille Buchanan was the chief executive officer of the Universal Service Fund. News emerged that her daughter had been employed to do social media tasks, hence charges of nepotism. Her academic qualifications, too, became an issue. She did not have the master's degree the post required. In fact, Ms. Buchanan only had 3 different certificates, but no bachelor's degree. She felt her experience outperformed the previous CEO, who had a PhD.
Even though Mr. Cross possessed a master's, a PhD, and I didn't. There are a number of things. There were a number of holes. There were a number of shortcomings in the entity. And to date, we have done so much work.
Ms. Buchanan had already resigned, but there was another agency in which all was not well. The managing director of the National Energy Solutions Limited, NESL. A money-related case is before the court involving one of its engineers and signing officer, 33-year-old Lawrence Pommels. However, much of the public scrutiny belongs to the agency's former managing director, Carolyn Warren. Ms. Warren had drug convictions over 2 decades ago, which the opposition felt her non-disclosure should disqualify her from the job. Turns out her priors were more than previously thought. There were also questions surrounding NESL's operations and contracts that were awarded.
At NESL, we have done millions of dollars of work since I've been there and before. I've never seen any tendered because it falls below the threshold. All we do is outsource the labor. Your question of why PEAC and PEAC alone, when Mr. Gordon did the first 3, Universal Service Fund was totally satisfied with what they got. During that time, when 1-1 was done, at the same time we were trying to find other persons. We were not successful, so Mr. Gordon just ended up doing those.
What was the process of engaging these service providers? Was it through select tender? Was it through bidding? How is it? Is it just I know somebody and I just engage him? I need clarification on that.
Direct contracting was used.
Ms. Warren indicated that they have had a history of doing direct contracting. The amount that was being contracted was less than $2 million. Universal Service Fund was happy with the quality of the work. They continued. If we as a committee have an issue with that, then we need to ask that the government changes the way its policy operates in respect of these matters.
Ms. Warren, too, had vacated her post prior to her last appearance before the committee. In all, 7 who started the year in some government capacity have been casualties of the PAAC's probe. Dr. Andrew Wheatley, Floyd Grindley, Camille Buchanan, Carolyn Warren, and the 3 PETROJAM board members. Ms. Ramarak remains.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Janello. All right, let me start off then by asking Leslie Campbell, what's been the, how would you summarize what the PAAC has achieved over the span of the various issues we saw in that report?
Well, it has managed to get the public engaged in what the administration, or lack thereof, has been about. I think the public engagement. Where I have the difficulty is that the PAAC seems to have gone about its business in a totally unsatisfactory way, in that its remit is set out very clearly in Standing Order 73.
Yes.
And the limitations placed on it in 77.7. And what we have is just a hodgepodge of, things happening. None of the witnesses who appear before this committee are sworn. No testimony in a satisfactory fashion is recorded. We, in the middle of taking so-called testimony, we start to express opinion and coming to conclusion because the committee is required to file a report at the end of the hearings, and this is supposed to be done at the end of the session for each parliamentary session. I'm yet to see one going into detail, investigating any matter, having it clearly defined before we go into these.
Say that again. I'm not sure I'm following that point.
Okay. If we follow 77.7, it says that the committee can only deal with matters referred to it by the House. I'm yet to see that. So we don't have a clearly defined scope of inquiry when we're going in. We call, whether it is the Bank of Jamaica, the PETROJam, or any one of these entities, and we start inquiring. We don't decide beforehand what it is that we are trying to determine. So we go there, we're throwing stones all over the place, and where it hits, somebody squeals, and yes, a conclusion is arrived at. That, yes, there's corruption. Yes, and there may very well have been acts of corruption or unsatisfactory management of entities. But that is not what the committee was set up to do.
Hold that thought for me. On that note, we're going to go to break. We'll get comment on that when we come back. Remember, you can text us. It's 8953999. Give us your first name, your location, and tweet us as well. Our hashtag is TVJ All Angles. Soon come.